There's one thing I wish I had understood much earlier. Not how to make money, not how to succeed, but the price each of us is paying every day without even realizing it. And that price has no name, no sound, yet it quietly wears away our lives bit by bit. It's not money, not time, but the very life we are draining away into things that aren't truly important. Welcome to Jim Rohn Treasures, where timeless wisdom blends into your modern journey. I want to tell you this. For many years, I thought I was moving forward. I worked more, ran faster, tried harder, but the more I pushed, the more exhausted I felt. At some point, I realized speed doesn't tell you where you're going, it only tells you how much you're burning. If you're watching this video, maybe you have the same confusion I once had. Why do I work so much, yet my life still hasn't changed? You look around and see others rising. An old friend gets promoted. A coworker buys a house. Someone starts a business. And deep inside you ask yourself, what am I missing? You're not missing opportunities. You're just missing principles, the things everyone assumes they know, but very few actually understand. Today, I want to share with you 12 principles that I wish I had known earlier. I wouldn't have lived so blindly and so tired. Not empty philosophy, not hollow motivation, just the lessons that time the strictest teacher has given me. And if you stay until the end of this video, I believe you'll look at your life with a new perspective, calmer, clearer, and wiser. Principle 1, choose the right game of life from the start. There's a lesson that took me a very long time to understand, one more important than anything I chased in my youth. Life doesn't reward the fastest. It rewards those who choose the right game. I used to play many wrong games. I didn't know it at first. You never do. Wrong games often come to you with excitement, urgency, the feeling of being recognized, the desire to prove yourself. And so you jump in like a young soldier, charging forward without knowing where you're going. I still remember in my 30s, there was a long period when I accepted any job that brought fast money. I thought it was smart. If it pays, it's good. If it pays quickly, even better. Opportunities don't wait. But after a while, I realized I was like someone wandering in a desert, running in every direction just because I saw a mirage. And every time I arrived, what I thought was water turned out to be cracked, dry land. Do you know the scariest thing about a mirage? It makes you gamble all your strength on something that doesn't exist. Life is the same. There are games you can win, but even if you win, you still lose. You lose your youth, your peace, the beautiful years you should have lived more truthfully. I've met many talented young people, smart, hardworking, full of energy, but they put themselves into games that will never take them where they truly want to go. And they don't realize it until it's too late. Once, I met a young man earning a lot of money in an industry he didn't love, didn't believe in. He said, I'm just doing this temporarily. When I've saved enough, I'll do what I like. I looked into his eyes and saw my younger self. I told him, what you call temporary often becomes forever. Not because you want it to, but because you trap yourself in the wrong game just because it gives fast results. Most young people don't lose because they lack intelligence. They lose because they choose their game based on pressure, comparison, and urgency instead of true values and who they really are. Imagine life as a giant chessboard. Every move is a decision. Every piece is a choice. But what matters isn't how many moves you have. It's whether you're playing the right match or not. When you play the right game, everything starts to make sense. Your effort has meaning. Your failures have meaning. You're no longer torn between want and must, between passion and responsibility. But when you play the wrong game, every success feels temporary, and every failure feels like a stab to your heart, because deep down you know you don't belong there. But how do I know which game is right? Someone once asked me that. I answered, look at the person the game is turning you into. If a job, a goal, a journey makes you smaller, drained, irritable, anxious, or lose the good in you, it's the wrong game, no matter how much money it brings. If a journey makes you more patient, generous, calm, and clear-minded, it's the right game. Even if it moves so slowly, it tests your patience. The right game nourishes you. The wrong game erodes you. What matters is not where you are, but where you're headed. I chose wrong many times, but what I'm grateful for is this. Each wrong choice pushed me a little closer to what was right. Not because I was smart, but because I stopped long enough to ask myself one question: is what I'm chasing really worth the cost? And you know, almost every time, the answer was no. When you choose the right game, you're no longer distracted by shiny but empty paths. You clearly know what is meant for you and what is not. You no longer worry that others are moving faster. You no longer fear being left behind, because you understand something that took me years to learn. Going right matters more than going fast. And when you go right, everything begins to unfold before you like a path that has waited for you for a very long time. And then, when I started choosing the right game, I discovered another truth, one even harder to accept. Even when you choose right, life won't open the way immediately. It wants to see if you have the patience to wait for your season. And that became the second lesson I learned through many long years. Principle 2, the power of slow patience. You know, after I chose the right game, I thought everything would become clear and smooth. I thought, as long as I'm in the right direction, life will open the path. But life doesn't work in such a pleasant way. Young people often misunderstand this, including myself back then. If you go right, you'll see progress immediately. No, not at all. Going right is often when you move the slowest. I once went through periods when every morning I woke up feeling like I was standing still while everyone around me was running loudly ahead. I watched people pass me, achieving things I also wished for. And many times I asked myself, what if I chose right, but destiny chose wrong for me? There were days I looked at my life like looking at a seed lying still in the soil. You water it, take care of it, do everything right, but nothing moves. The soil stays silent. No leaf, no sprout, no sign that you're doing anything correctly. And that's when doubt begins to seep in like a cold mist. But remember this something I paid a high price to understand. Most things that matter in life grow in silence. A bamboo tree, before growing 100 feet in a few months, stays quietly underground for 5 years to build its roots. And during those 5 years, anyone looking at it thinks it's doing nothing. Just like people looking at you now, maybe they think you're not making any progress at all. But if you're planting the right seed, silence is not delay. Silence is preparation. A friend once told me, the hardest thing in life isn't hard work, it's waiting for the right moment. And he was right. I've seen talented people lose their chance simply because they couldn't endure a few months of standing still. They changed direction, changed dreams, changed goals, changed their game, just because they mistook silence as a sign of being wrong. What you don't know is, sometimes life is testing if you have enough patience to deserve the reward. I used to chase hot opportunities, the ones promising quick results. And every single time they flared up and died out. Nothing truly sustainable ever grows too easily. So I began to learn a different kind of patience, the patience I call slow patience. Slow patience is not sitting still. It's continuing to do the small right things, even when you don't see any results. It's trusting the process, even when the process doesn't favor you. It's standing firm, even when life gives no sign you should. One afternoon, I sat in my office looking back at old notes. I realized that every good thing in my life came slowly. None of it came fast. Not my career, not my wisdom, not my peace. All of it came after years of days that felt meaningless. And that's when I understood. You can't harvest in the season of sowing. You must let time do its part. The biggest things in your life are coming. They're just coming at a pace you can't control. What you can control is your patience. And one day you'll look back at the path you walked and say to yourself, I'm glad I didn't give up. I'm glad I survived those months that seemed like nothing. Patience never betrays you. It just tests you longer than you expect. And in the process of learning to wait, I discovered something even deeper, something I later called the ability to endure the silence of time, a kind of strength rarely talked about, yet it determines almost the entire quality of your life. Principle 3, the ability to endure the silence of time. There's something you won't find in books, in courses, or in anyone's advice. Life will sometimes be silent with you for a very long time. Long enough that you think you're on the wrong path. Long enough that you want to scream, why am I doing the right thing yet nothing is happening? I've been through such phases years when every morning I woke up, nothing seemed to change. Work stayed the same, income stayed the same, opportunities stayed far away. No one knew I was trying. No one saw my effort, no one cared. And in those very days, I learned the most important lesson. The silence of time is not to punish you. It is a test to see if you truly deserve what you're seeking. Anyone can endure a bit of hardship. Anyone can endure one failure. But enduring silence is completely different. Silence is when you do the right things and life doesn't pat you on the shoulder. Silence is when you try, but the results feel like a dark room with no windows. Silence is when you plant a seed and the next day, the next week, the next month, nothing appears. And then your mind begins creating terrible scenarios. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm fooling myself. Maybe I don't belong on this path. But you know, it is in those very moments that your true self appears. Imagine you're rowing a small boat in the middle of the night ocean. No light, no sound, no sign of where the shore is. Only the faint splash of your oar on the water. You could stop any time. You could turn back to safety. You could say, forget it. The sea is too dark. But if you keep rowing, even just a little, even just in rhythm with your breath, the strange thing is the sun will rise. You don't know when or where, but it will rise. And when the first light hits the surface of the sea, you'll understand that every stroke in the darkness was not meaningless. Life works the same. Everyone will go through their own stretch of darkness where no one sees your effort, no one claps, no one tells you you're doing well. But those silent seasons are what build your endurance. They shape you into someone who can wait, who can stay disciplined, who doesn't rely on others' approval. I've seen many talented people collapse, not because they lacked skill, but because they couldn't endure the silence of time. They changed direction right when their seed was about to sprout. They gave up right when life was about to open. They turned left just because no one said they were going right. And they never knew. Every great achievement requires a very long, quiet period before it appears. I believe that where your life grows the most is always where applause is the least. If you're in that silence now, treat it as a privilege. It's when you build your foundation, your character, discipline, focus, patience, the things no one can see, but they determine your entire future. One day when you step out of this darkness, you will be grateful for it, because it is what made you sharper, deeper, stronger. And from those seemingly endless, quiet stretches, I discovered something essential to life, something that shaped all my years afterward. The ability to recognize enough and not let myself get pulled into the endless race of the modern world. Principle 4, knowing what enough is. There's something very strange about us humans. We always think we need more money, more achievements, more fame. But the more we have, the more we feel we lack. It's like drinking seawater to quench your thirst. The more you drink, the thirstier you get, the more you chase, the emptier you feel. I once believed that being richer meant being better, that each new rung of success would make me happier. But then I realized what exhausts people the most is not lacking money, but never defining what enough means. I've sat next to very wealthy people, and I say this with the honesty of someone who's been around. Many rich people live more miserably than the poor. Not because they lack anything, but because they have too many things they must protect. A big house comes with big worries. A big check comes with big sleepless nights. And many relationships after a while turn into nothing but a battle to see who is using whom. You see, when life is too full, you no longer have space to breathe. I've always believed that enough is an art far harder than making money. Making money takes skill. Keeping money takes wisdom. But knowing enough takes clarity and courage. Clarity to see what you truly need. Courage to say no to what you don't, even when it looks very attractive. Once, I stood in a large room owned by a friend, a man who had almost everything society calls success. I asked him, of all these things, which one makes you the happiest? He gave a sad smile and replied, none of them. The only thing I want is to get back the peace I lost while chasing all of this. That moment stayed with me for a long time. Life doesn't become deeper because of what you add, but because of what you're brave enough to let go of. A room only needs one window to welcome the light, not 10 spotlights. A heart is the same. It just needs enough to be at peace. If these sharings are resonating with you, take a second to hit subscribe to Jim Rohn Treasures. Every week I send you slow, deep, real lessons to help you live more wisely in a world with too much noise. I truly appreciate it if you choose to walk this journey with me. When you understand what enough is, you stop running in races that don't belong to you. You no longer compare yourself to others, no longer feel inferior to anyone, no longer look up and feel lacking, and no longer look down and see anyone as beneath you. You begin to look into yourself. And the beautiful thing is, when you know enough, you have something many rich people don't: freedom. Freedom from competition. Freedom from the pressure to prove yourself. Freedom from the fear of not good enough yet. Freedom from the trap of meaningless accumulation. I've seen young people waste an entire life just because they never stop to ask, how much is enough for me? They keep adding more work, more goals, more overwhelm, more pressure, more expectations that no one ever asked them to carry. But you know, a bottle can only hold water when you stop pouring more in. A life can only be meaningful when you know the limits you need to respect. We don't burn out because we do too many things. We burn out because we do too many things that don't matter. And then, when you know what enough is, you'll see life become clearer, not because you have more, but because you see clearly what is worth keeping. And from that very moment of understanding the value of enough, I realized something else important, a power few people notice, but that can transform your entire life. The power of tiny habits, micro-disciplines that seem meaningless, yet create massive effects over time. Principle 5, micro-discipline. Small habits that change your whole life. For a long time, I believed that big breakthroughs were what created success, that you needed a great idea, a special opportunity, a brilliant mentor for your life to change direction. But the longer I lived, the more I saw the things that change your life are not always big. What truly changes your life is often very small. There are habits so small, you can hardly believe they have any power. But it's precisely their smallness that makes them sustainable. I remember when I was young, every time I started a new goal, I'd approach it like a young person does. Fiery, loud, intense. I'd throw myself into it like a blazing fire and burn out just as fast as a matchstick. There were mornings when I woke up very early, read hundreds of pages, filled a whole notebook with notes. But 3 days later, that energy disappeared. And then I'd hate myself for not being consistent. Until one day, I met an older man who looked ordinary, but there was one thing I couldn't ignore: the calm in every movement he made. I asked him his secret. He smiled. There is no secret. I just love small things and do them longer than others. I didn't understand that day, but over the years, that sentence haunted me. Love small things, do them long, not more than others, just longer than others. And gradually, I realized that discipline is not about grand actions. Discipline is small actions, repeated long enough to become a part of who you are. You want to be healthy? You don't need to work out 2 hours a day. Just 15 minutes for 30 years. You want to be wise? You don't need to read 50 books a month. Just 10 pages a day, but never skip a day. You want better finances? You don't need 10 extra income streams. Just spend 5% less than you earn and stick to that principle your whole life. Young people often ask me, how do I build discipline? I answer, don't build discipline. Build small habits. Discipline will follow. Life is not built from explosive moments. Life is built from small, steady things, the kind no one notices. Yet they quietly shape who you are. Imagine you're holding a hammer, striking a stone. You hit it 50 times, no crack. You hit it 80 times, still nothing. You hit it 200 times, still no sign. But on the 201st strike, the stone breaks. It breaks not because the 201st strike was stronger, but because the 200 unseen strikes before it all counted. Habits work the same way. Results come very late, but when they do, they transform the way you run your life. I want you to remember this. One small right habit done consistently is stronger than any burst of effort that burns bright and dies quickly. I've met people who changed their lives just by walking 10 minutes every morning, writing one sentence in a journal every night, tidying their workspace for 3 minutes before bed, reading 5 pages as soon as they wake up. Nothing grand, nothing cool. But those things save their lives from chaos. Because what small habits do is build you, not just improve your results. They teach you stability. They teach you to trust what you can control. They teach you that you don't need to run fast, you just need not to stop. And one day, you'll realize you've gone very far without really knowing how you did it. You did it because each day you only needed to move 1% forward, and time did the rest. Microdiscipline is exactly that. So small, you barely notice it, yet so big your life can never be the same. And then, when I understood the power of these small things, I realized something even bigger. To go far, you must learn for a lifetime. To last long, you must constantly update yourself, even in the things you once thought were absolutely certain. And that's when I stepped into the next lesson. The journey of lifelong learning and daring to change belief you once thought unchangeable. Principle 6, lifelong learning and the courage to change your mind. There's something I learned very late. Knowledge only has value if you're willing to let it change you. What keeps people stuck is not that they lack knowledge, but that they cling too tightly to old knowledge. When I was young, I used to think that once I understood something, truly understood it, it would be right forever. That if I grasped a principle, a strategy, a method, I could use it for life. But life doesn't stand still. And anyone who stands still in a moving world will be left behind. I've met many smart people, people who read many books, hold many degrees, have all it takes to go far, yet their lives stop at the moment they stop updating themselves. They think, this way worked before. I just need to keep doing it. And then they look around and see others moving faster, succeeding more, adapting better, while they struggle with outdated formulas. I went through a phase like that myself. I succeeded in one field and I thought I knew enough. I clung to my old correctness like someone clings to a warm coat in winter. But when the season changed, that coat which once protected me became a burden. Life changed and I didn't. And that was when I had to learn one of the hardest lessons. Being right yesterday doesn't mean you're right today. Once in a conversation with an old friend, he said, "The dumbest thing smart people often do is think they can't be wrong." That sentence cut into my ego, but it also opened a new door for me. I started learning again, learning to question myself, learning to listen to things that went against my beliefs, learning to see situations from angles that weren't mine. And what I discovered was this: you cannot grow if you're not willing to let yourself be wrong. I began exploring fields I had never touched before. Psychology, biology, art, how the world works in ways I'd never thought would relate to me. And surprisingly, those seemingly unrelated things helped me see my own decisions more clearly. I call that the intersections of knowledge. That's where knowledge from many fields combines and opens completely new ways of understanding. The more I learned, the smaller I felt. And the smaller I felt, the easier it became to learn. The saddest thing I see in many people is that they stop learning after gaining a bit of success. They treat knowledge as something to display, to brag about, to prove they know more than others. But the truth is, knowledge is not something you own. It's something you must nurture every day. And if you stop nurturing it, it dies. Just like a beautiful garden will turn into barren land if you neglect it. Lifelong learning is not accumulation. Lifelong learning is renewal. It's letting your mind breathe, giving it space for things that are truer, deeper, more relevant to the present. One more important thing. Learning is not just about adding. Learning is also about letting go. Letting go of prejudice. Letting go of ego. Letting go of old assumptions that once helped you but are now holding you back. I once told a young person, "Don't try to prove you're right. Try to see where you're wrong." And he asked me, "Why look for what's wrong?" I replied, "Because what's wrong is the doorway to a better version of you." When you dare to change your mind, you don't get weaker. You get stronger because you're no longer chained by your own self. I want you to remember this. Someone who doesn't dare change their mind is like a boat that refuses to turn even when it sees a storm ahead. The world changes every day. If you don't update yourself, you'll get stuck in an old version of yourself from a time that no longer exists. And from that habit of lifelong learning, I discovered an even deeper layer of wisdom, the thing that truly separates those who succeed from those who stay stuck. The way they connect knowledge from many fields to see life with deeper and wider vision. That is the next step in this journey, the lesson about multi-axis thinking where true wisdom really begins to form. Principle 7, multi-axis thinking. One of the biggest mistakes young people make, and I say this with the honesty of someone who's lived almost a full life, is thinking that being good at one thing is enough. Good at your expertise, good at your job, good at the skill you're pursuing. But life doesn't operate on a straight line. Life operates at intersections. I call that multi-axis thinking the ability to connect pieces of understanding that seem unrelated into a new perspective that's deeper and sharper. And it is that very perspective that creates true wisdom. I realized this after many years observing the successful people around me. They don't just understand money, they understand psychology. They don't just understand business, they understand people. They don't just understand markets, they understand how the world operates on many different levels. And then I noticed something very strange. The people with the deepest thinking are not the ones who read the most, but the ones who connect the most. They look at a problem not only with logic, but with history, with emotion, with human behavior, with natural law. They see relationships that others never notice. I remember the first time I realized this power. I was reading a book on biology, nothing related to investing at all. In it, there was a passage describing how plants compete for light. Strong trees grow taller, weak ones slowly die underneath. But the interesting part was, some species don't compete, they support each other to grow. They form an ecosystem where each plant thrives because of its differences, not because of its similarities. I closed the book and asked myself, could it be that markets work the same way? And from that question, I started seeing businesses differently. I watched how they competed, how they coexisted, how they shared market share yet still grew, and I understood things I couldn't grasp years earlier. That is multi-axis thinking, understanding deeper, because you're seeing wider. Someone who only understands finance will analyze numbers. But someone who also understands psychology will understand why the numbers move that way. Someone who only looks at market charts will only see trends. But someone who understands human behavior will see the forces behind those trends. And the person who understands both will go further than everyone. Multi-axis thinking gives you an advantage very few people have. The ability to foresee without guessing. You don't have to get lucky because you see patterns others don't. I once told a young person, don't try to become the best in one field. Become someone who understands enough fields to see life in 3D. He asked, why do I need to understand that many things? I replied, because the most important decisions in life don't sit in a single field. They sit at the intersection of many fields. Look back at your big decisions. Choosing a career, it's not just finance, it's psychology, passion, and your living environment. Choosing a life partner, it's not just emotion, it's values, worldview, and how they handle hardship. Building wealth is not just investing, it's discipline, habits, patience, and understanding people. Life is never one-dimensional. It is always a symphony of many layers of meaning. And when you learn to see life through many axes, you'll see doors others don't even know exist. You'll make decisions more lightly because you understand more clearly. You'll panic less because you see further ahead. You'll be more confident because you see the logic others miss. And most importantly, you won't be trapped in an old version of yourself. Multi-axis thinking is the compass of wisdom. It doesn't give you the answer immediately, but it gives you the right direction. And the right direction leads you to things you never imagined. I want you to remember this. When you learn to connect the pieces of life, you'll see a picture others will never see. And from that expansion of understanding, I realized something just as important. No matter how deep you think, no matter how smart you are, life will still teach you through failure. Mistakes are not the opposite of wisdom. Mistakes are the raw material of wisdom. And that is the next lesson, how to turn mistakes into the greatest asset of your life. Principle 8, turning mistakes into assets. There was a long period in my life when I hated my mistakes. I saw them as stains, as weaknesses, as proof that I was less than others. I hid them, denied them, even tried to forget them. But the longer I lived, the more I saw. Nothing has taught me as much as the things I did wrong. And strangely, the people with the deepest maturity are not the ones with the most success, but the ones who handle their mistakes differently from the rest of the world. Most people make a mistake, then get scared, then avoid it, and keep walking forward with a wound that never healed. But mature people are different. They stop. They look at that mistake with almost brutal honesty, and they ask, "What is this trying to teach me?" I remember once in a big deal, I trusted the wrong person. That trust cost me a significant amount of money, and worse, many years of blaming myself. One evening, sitting alone in a dark room, I asked myself, what hurts more, the money I lost or the feeling that I'm a fool? And I realized what broke me wasn't the loss, it was my wounded ego. We're not afraid of mistakes. We're afraid of the feeling of having to admit we were wrong. But the moment I said I really was wrong, it felt like someone lifted a stone off my chest. And from that day on, I stopped seeing mistakes as enemies and started seeing them as a kind of raw asset like unrefined gold. It's ugly, messy, painful, but if you know how to process it, it becomes the most valuable thing you own. I've met people who use mistakes as an excuse to stop, but I've also met people who use mistakes as fuel to go further. The first group treats mistakes like a sentence. The second group treats mistakes like a lesson. And the difference in their lives is so big, it can't be compared. I once told a young person, mistakes don't make you weaker. You become weaker when you close your heart after a mistake. Because when you close your heart, you don't take in more pain, but you also don't take in more wisdom. You lock yourself inside your old ego, your old version, your old limits. But when you open up, you let the mistake speak to you. You let it tell you things success never will. You let it reveal blind spots you couldn't see when everything was going well. Some small mistakes teach you to be more careful. Some medium mistakes teach you to be more humble. And some big mistakes, the ones that cost you something precious, teach you to become an entirely different person. I learned this. Not every mistake is scary. Only the mistakes you don't learn from are truly scary. Imagine mistakes as cracks in a ceramic vase. In Japan, there's an art called kintsugi. They mend the cracks with gold. The result is not a perfect vase, but a more beautiful one, deeper and with its own story. We humans are the same. We are at our most beautiful, not when we've never broken, but when we dare to piece ourselves back together with new wisdom, a new heart, and a level of honesty that not many are brave enough to face. And when I looked back on my life, I saw that my biggest mistakes were the foundation for my biggest leaps. I wasn't grateful for those falls when they happened. But years later, looking back, I understood those mistakes turned me into a version of myself I could never have become if everything had gone smoothly. Here's how I want you to see mistakes. Not as something to blame yourself for, not as something to hide, but as a tool to upgrade yourself. Because when you dare to face your mistakes, you don't just heal them, you turn them into strength. And that honesty, that courage, will lead you to another profound lesson, a lesson about people, that the people you keep around you will determine the speed of your growth more than any success ever will. Principle 9, choose the people around you like you choose seeds. There's something I learned very late, and if I'd known it sooner, my life would have been much lighter. Not every soil can grow good seeds, and not everyone deserves a place in your journey. I used to think I could connect with everyone, that as long as I lived well, kindly, sincerely, everyone around me would be the same. But life doesn't work like that. Some people are like the sun. They warm you, brighten you, and help you become a better version of yourself. But some people are like shade. They slowly make you wither without you noticing. I call the people we connect with seeds, and our minds and hearts are the soil. If you plant good seeds in that soil, love, kindness, discipline, wisdom, peace, you'll grow into a vibrant garden. But if you plant bad seeds, jealousy, negativity, suspicion, bitterness, your life will become barren land to the point where you no longer recognize yourself. I've watched many young people with potential, with dreams, with everything it takes to go far, but they go wrong simply because they stand next to the wrong people. I've seen good friends slowly disappear from someone's life just because that person stepped into a group that always mocks, always doubts, always drags others down. I've also seen people completely change their lives just because they found a friend who believed in them, lifted them up, and saw what they themselves couldn't see. You see, people affect each other more than we think. You don't just hear their words, you absorb their energy. You absorb their thoughts. You absorb how they react to hardship. You absorb how they see life. If you're around someone who only complains, you'll learn to complain. If you're around someone who always blames others, you'll learn to avoid responsibility. If you're around someone who only cares about money, you'll unconsciously measure everything in money. If you're around someone who is full of fear, you'll see life as nothing but danger. But if you're around someone who lives with purpose, you'll learn to live with purpose. If you're around someone who knows how to love, you'll become softer. If you're around someone who takes responsibility, you'll mature faster. And if you're around someone with faith, life will feel less blurry. I once told a young person, choose your friends as seriously as you'd choose where to build your house. He asked, why so serious? I answered, because your environment can destroy you faster than any failure ever will. We often underestimate the impact of the people we're around every day. But the truth is, we become the closest version of the people we spend time with. It's no coincidence that successful people are often around other successful people. Not because they're better, but because they share the same standard of living. They don't allow negativity into their lives. They don't accept toxic relationships. They don't choose people who only know how to take but never give. One right friend can save you from a lifetime on the wrong path. One wrong friend can make you lose the soul of who you are. What matters most is not having many friends, but having the right ones. Not everyone who smiles at you is an ally. Not everyone walking with you now will walk with you long term. And not everyone who says they love you truly wants to see you become your best self. Choose the people who make you feel at peace when you're with them. The ones who make you want to be a better person. The ones who remind you that this life is still very beautiful, very vast, and very worth living kindly. And when I understood that, I realized the people around us don't just determine our peace, they determine the quality of the decisions we make. Choose the right people, and you'll choose the right life. Choose the wrong people, and you may choose everything else wrong. And from that lesson about people, I stepped into another truth I wish someone had told me earlier. That work, the environment where we spend most of our lives, must also nourish our soul, not just keep us alive. Principle 10, work must nourish your soul, not just keep you alive. There were years in my life when I spent far too much time working just for money. I used to think that as long as my job helped me pay the bills, save a little, and live decently, then that was good enough. But the older I got, the more I realized, work doesn't just take up most of your time, it takes up most of your mind. And when your work doesn't nourish your soul, it starts to wear you down. I've met people who wake up every morning feeling like they're about to enter a battle. They don't hate life, they just hate the biggest part of their life, the hours they spend working. When they're at the office, they think about the end of the day. When the day ends, they worry about having to go back tomorrow. And slowly, they stop living, they only wait. You see, people don't burn out because they work too much. They burn out because they do work that doesn't belong to them. Once, I met a man who used to earn a very high income, but I noticed something strange in his eyes. Emptiness. I asked him, what makes you this tired? He answered, it's not the pressure. It's not the hours. It's that I don't see myself in my own life. That sentence stayed with me for many years. Some jobs make you age very quickly, not because of their pressure, but because they don't touch your values. The right job is not the easy job. The right job is the one that makes you a better version of yourself. I've seen people leave high-paying jobs to do something they truly believe in. Not everyone understands them, but I do, because I know the feeling of waking up every morning with a dry heart, and I also know the feeling of waking up and knowing you're truly alive. The right work gives you three things. Peace. You don't have to fight yourself every day. Growth. You grow through each experience, each challenge. Pride. You know you're doing something meaningful. The wrong work takes away three things: your joy, your mental health, and sometimes your self-respect. A young person once asked me, how do I know if my work is feeding my soul or hurting me? I said, Look at yourself after work. How do you feel when you leave? Are you still yourself? Do you still keep your kindness, your calm, and your hope throughout the day? If a job makes you harsh, cold, or numb, not because you're like that, but because the environment forces you to be that way, then it's not the place for you. Because the right job won't make you smaller, it makes you grow. Some people stay in the wrong job because they're afraid of change. Some stay because they've gotten used to that kind of pain. Some stay because they think everyone hates their job. But that's not true. The right work can make you tired, but it's a kind of tired that makes life worth living. It can stress you, but it's the kind of stress that builds a stronger version of you. It can make you sweat, but it will never make you lose your soul. I've been in the wrong work, and I paid with years I can never get back. But when I got out, everything changed. Life felt lighter, my thinking grew deeper, and my heart opened wider. So I want you to remember this. Work doesn't just sustain your life, it becomes part of who you are. And you deserve to do something that makes you live, not just exist. Choose work that makes you feel like you're evolving, expanding, becoming deeper, more mature, more at peace. Choose an environment where you feel seen, respected, and understood. Choose a path that makes you feel proud when you think about yourself. Because at the end of your life, you won't remember how much you earned. You'll remember who you became in the process of earning it. And from that realization, I learned another lesson, a lesson about inner stillness, that no matter how right your work is, life will still demand a skill no school ever teaches, the skill of keeping your inner peace when everything around you becomes chaotic. Principle 11, keep inner peace amidst all chaos. There's something young people often misunderstand. They think peace is something you only have when life is less turbulent, when pressure drops, when work is stable, when everything gets easier. But the longer I live, the more I see. Peace is not the reward for a life with few storms. Peace is the skill that lets you survive a life full of storms. You can tidy your room. You can arrange your desk. You can organize your life. But you cannot organize the world. The world will stay noisy. People will stay unpredictable. Markets will still go up and down. Work will still have chaotic seasons. And life will still have days that exhaust you so much you want to give up. So if you want a life worth living, you must learn something no classroom teaches. Keeping inner peace, even when the world around you is falling apart. There were years when I lived in constant tension. Anything that happened could easily knock me off balance, a criticism, a small failure, a sudden change at work, someone not understanding me. I overreacted, overworried, and overtired myself simply because I hadn't learned how to manage my inner world. One afternoon, I met an elderly man sitting by a lake. He looked so peaceful that I could feel his calmness from a distance. I asked, "How are you this peaceful? Life is never easy." He looked at the surface of the lake and said, "Do you see the water? Beneath it are all kinds of swirling currents. Peace on the surface doesn't mean there's no chaos underneath. It just means the lake has learned to hold itself." That sentence changed me. I realized peace is not about walking away from everything, but about standing in the middle of everything without losing yourself. Not that you don't feel pain, but you don't let pain control you. Not that you don't feel fear, but you don't let fear pull you backward. Not that you don't feel anger, but you know when to put it down instead of throwing it at others. I began learning to observe my emotions instead of becoming them. When anxiety came, I asked, "Where is this coming from?" When fear came, I asked, "What is causing this?" When anger came, I asked, "What wound in me is being touched?" I discovered that 90% of what made me restless didn't come from events, but from the meaning I attached to those events. Someone not replying to your message doesn't mean they look down on you. An opportunity coming late doesn't mean you're not worthy. A delay doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. And a failure doesn't mean you are a failure. It only means you're learning how to move forward. Inner peace comes when you understand that not every storm is sent to destroy you. Some storms come to help you clear away what you haven't dared to let go of. I want you to remember this. A peaceful heart is the highest yielding asset you can own in life. Because when you're at peace, you make better decisions, you love the right people, you keep the right relationships, you don't destroy yourself with unnecessary worries, you see clearly what matters and what doesn't. When your mind is calm, your life is clear. One day, When I learned to stand firm in chaos, I realized something interesting. What I once thought were big problems became much smaller when I looked at them from a peaceful mind. The outside can be noisy, but inside you must be quiet. The outside can be unpredictable, but inside you must be steady. The outside can pull you in many directions, but inside you must have one direction. And when you have inner peace, your life begins to move differently, lighter, clearer, more resilient, and deeper. And from that very peace, I came to the final lesson, a lesson I believe everyone needs if they want to walk through a whole life fully. The lesson of letting go. Not letting go of dreams, but letting go of what no longer fits to create space for what is more worthy to come in. Principle 12, letting go to grow. There's something I only understood much later. People are not weighed down by what they carry, they're weighed down by what they refuse to put down. We don't burn out because of work, goals, or the journey. We burn out because we hold on to too many things that no longer belong to us. I once held on to things so old they slowly wore down my heart. I held on to relationships that were no longer walking the same path. I held on to failures I should have been grateful for. I held on to other people's expectations, thinking they were my responsibility. I held on to fears that youth had accidentally left behind. And then one day I realized, you cannot move to the next chapter if you keep rereading the last one. Letting go is not losing. Letting go is releasing. Releasing energy. Releasing your mind. Releasing yourself from things that expired long ago. I remember a small story. Once, while walking near a forest, I saw a big tree with a large broken branch. What was strange was that the broken branch was still hanging there, heavy on the trunk. Through the winter, it became a kind of burden the tree had to carry. But the next spring, when a strong wind swept through, that branch finally fell. And what happened next left me frozen in place. The tree suddenly sprouted a fresh layer of leaves, greener, stronger, and faster than the other trees around it. I understood that the tree hadn't been able to grow not because it was weak, but because it was carrying something that no longer belonged to it. When the branch fell, it had space to grow. We're the same. There are things you don't let go of, not because you need them, but because you fear the emptiness if you don't have them. But emptiness is not dangerous. Emptiness is a signal that your life is about to be filled with something new, something more fitting, brighter, truer. A young person once asked me, how do I know when it's time to let go? I answered, when that thing makes you smaller instead of bigger. Look at yourself. A relationship that makes you doubt your worth? A job that turns you numb? An old dream that no longer fits but you still cling to? An image of yourself that you're exhausted from trying to protect? None of those things are required to stay with you for life. Letting go is not failure. Letting go is a form of maturity, maturity enough to say, this no longer serves me and I deserve something better. One day, I sat and looked back at everything I'd lost. Broken relationships, collapsed plans, wrong beliefs, opportunities that seemed perfect but led me off course. And I suddenly realized something that brought me to tears, but they were tears of gratitude. If those things hadn't left, the good things beside me today would never have had space to arrive. Life is a suitcase with limited space. If you keep what's heavy, you won't have room for what's valuable. And you'll keep asking why your life never changes. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. Letting go means you no longer let the past drive your life. It's still there, but it's behind you. You move on and it stays put. Letting go doesn't mean becoming cold. Letting go means you choose what is kindest for your soul. When you learn this art, you'll feel your life become half as heavy. The noise in your heart quiets down. Your worries shrink. And what's right naturally finds its way to you. Because sometimes you don't have to search for what you deserve. You just have to create enough space for it to find you. And when I understood the lesson of letting go, I realized that what I'd been seeking all along, peace, wisdom, growth, wasn't out in front of me. It was inside the very moments when I dared to put down what no longer fit. That was also when I knew the journey of growing up never ends. It only opens into a deeper, wider, truer chapter. One last thing I want you to carry with you after watching this video. Life does not change because of big moments. Life changes When you truly decide to become a different person, not tomorrow, not when things calm down, not we'll see. But right now in the moment, you look at yourself and say, I deserve a better life than this, and I'm going to do something about it. You don't control your starting point. You didn't choose your family, your past, or the mistakes that have already happened, but you do have the right to choose who you will become from this moment forward. You have the right to choose a life with purpose instead of running aimlessly, a sustainable journey instead of burning short bursts of energy, a peaceful mind instead of chaos, an open soul instead of being dragged down by the past. You've walked with me through this whole journey, 12 principles, 12 layers of wisdom, 12 doors into a deeper version of yourself. But everything I've said will be meaningless if you don't take one real step. Remember, life doesn't reward those who listen the most. Life rewards those who dare to begin. And sometimes beginning is as simple as one sentence. I will change. My tomorrow will be different from today. I will not let this life pass by unconsciously anymore. If you can do just that one small thing, you'll be surprised at how life starts to turn in ways you never thought possible. If this journey has touched you, please like and subscribe to Jim Rohn Treasures. Not for the algorithm, but so that each week you have a place to return to, a place that reminds you that you deserve something better. Among the 12 principles today, which one do you want to apply immediately, and why? I would really love to read your answer. Success is not something you pursue, it is something you attract by the person you become.